Fans of Horus Heresy and Warhammer 40,000, thank you very much for joining me for part 4 of my guide to building the Legion Fellblade. And in this episode we're going to be talking about the glacis plate. Yes, the glacis plate. Well, I tell a slight lie, they call it the front hull. I'm going to call it the glacis plate because it sounds better, so there. Right, let us begin with a visit to the instructions. Right, so if we just recap, it says assemble plastic components as shown, and we remember here what I noted from the previous episode, do not glue the hull sides onto the base at this point, so otherwise you can't get the front plate in, and also you need these unassembled, important point there. And then it shows you putting the hull front on. It does note here, and then it says, note, assemble parts 14, 40, 20 and 13 as loose fit before gluing to get the best fit. So that is a hull front plate, the hull top and the engine. That's good advice, but well, I would say not really. Do it in a different order, and to understand the best order in which to do it, we need to deal with the bolter cover and the heavy bolters first. The reason for this is to get the geometry right on the glacis plate. I think you really want to be assembling the bolter cover and heavy bolter first, so you can line this up properly. So that's how I'm approaching this, and certainly how I would recommend that you do it, and the same would equally apply with the Legion glaive. The falchion will be a different case because it doesn't have this separate turret. The hull's a single piece, but that's a story for another day. Let's actually look at what I've done. So this is how the front end of my Fellblade looks at the moment. So we're going to take this off like this, and then I can show you how I've actually gone about doing this. You can see that what I've done is I've stuck the heavy bolter cover in place and the heavy bolters with the glacis plate, the front hull, into a single unit. And the reason I've done this is it gives us these two attachment lugs on either side, which makes it much easier to do any fitting thereafter. If you don't do that, what happens is every time you drop this part in, it kind of does this. It has this habit to sink because this ridge here doesn't give a firm enough attachment for test fitting. Believe me, if you try to put this all together with this loose, this bit here, the heavy bolter and turret cover, you end up needing to get impregnated by a gene stealer to have some hybrids to have an extra arm, because there's just too much to do really, I think. So what I did is I stuck this in place, as you can see. Now I've permanently fixed my heavy bolters in place. It doesn't bother me to have them moving. So, you know, your mileage may vary on that. Just something to think about. There's a few things here to be aware of. I guess the first thing is you'll notice it flush with the base plate either side, these two parts of the edges of the heavy bolter turret. And to do that, I had to manipulate this plate, so I had to kind of like put a bit of a bend in it, almost. And then I had to mess around with this, heating it up and rebending it a few times to get the correct geometry. You also need to carefully consider how this is lining up at the back. In the end, I ended up with it pretty much level with the demolisher cannon position. And then if we take the upper hull, that's going to interface like so there. What I would say is if you're building this kit, see how your kit fits together and go with the best fit. For me, that worked. It doesn't all quite fit true because you see I've got a bit of a gap here. I don't think that matters, but just to be aware of it. I could have mounted this a little bit further back to close that gap up, but it would have affected how it would fit around here. So, you know, it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I mean, I could easily, and I may well do, put a little resin spacer in there just to close that up a bit. Talking of resin spacers, I had to put a couple of resin spacers into this assembly to get it all lined up. There's a lip here that runs underneath the turret cover. I took a very thin sliver of resin and stuck it along there. It was only a fraction of a millimetre thick, and this is what I used. When I buy forge wall kits, if I see any interesting bits of resin, any offcuts, you know, sprues, keys, gates, I save them in a little box for eventualities like this. And I just made a spacer out of this thin piece of resin here. And that was perfect because it just lifted the edge of this heavy bolter turret cover up to get it flush with the demolisher cannon mount. I also then used the other part of this to put a spacer on the underside of the heavy bolter turret, which you can't see now because I have stuck this in place. But that just raised the whole thing up a little bit and made it, in my view, just line up nicely. You could probably do the same as this without sticking the heavy bolters in place. Although just be aware that then you've got this tiny little edge here. This side of the part is just going to be supported by this tiny little contact point there Just something to consider. As I said, for me, I wasn't bothered about this turret moving, and that's trading off, you know, nice movie gun turret bit for helping the overall assembly process. And once you've done that, then when you come to this bit, it's dead easy. You slot it in and voila. And so if we just now build this back up, so put the front plate in, then you can see, so we do that section like so. Thank you very much, camera focus. And then we can just slide that in like that, and we've got a good fit. And then we can take the upper hull, and that just dead easy slides on like that. If you've got any to hand, a couple of rubber bands would be quite useful for holding the plastic hull together. You can wrap it around this mounting for the rear drive or sprocket wheel just to hold it together. Yeah, then you get to this sort of position here. And believe me, that makes the whole thing much easier. And then I've got a little bit of playing around to do just to get all this lined up as best I can. There you go, that's pretty good now. And then it's, you know, ready to glue. So there's another thing I'd like to talk about in this video, which is getting the fit right on the first pieces of track. So what we're going to do here is we need to put these track units on, these side units. So I've got a little bit of blue tack. I'm just going to use this to tack these on in position. So it will be something of a minor miracle if I pull all this off without the hull disintegrating itself. That's one. Got the second. Okay, that's not bad. Right, on this side we've got a nice close fit. On this side there is still a little bit of a gap there, you can see just here. I don't know if I can close it up. I might have one last go at heating this part up and closing it up, but I'm not quite sure if I'm going to get it. It's slightly open as well because I've got the tack on the side, which is actually spacing that a little bit. Now we've got it lined up, we can see at the front these buttresses or these plastic guides are touching the resin part, which is good, so that's tight in. What we then need are the first two pieces of track on each side. We've got the right one and the right two, so it's the same either side. These arrows point forward, so there's our arrow, and that piece sits there like that. So again, the arrows continue to point the same way, so it's going around like that. Looking at the right side with the front forward, that's anti-clockwise. There you go. And then that slides on thusly. Well, we'll try again. On here, that should hold it in place. And go right. And that's what the track arrangement's supposed to be like there. And then we'll do the same on this side. So here's left number one, so forward points that way. And then left two, same again. See here that you want these tracks coming down here fairly level, and these aren't quite there yet. You want them kind of as parallel as you can to the sides, because by the sides I mean these plastic bits. Because then what you're going to have here is you're going to have the left and the right hand side wheel bracket mounting. And that's these two parts here. And they mount like so. The fit on these is not particularly affirmative, and I've got work to do to figure out the best fit. But once you start getting into these parts, you also need to start working with the front drive wheel. These here, which is right 3 and left 3, which is the front wheels, and you need to be working with these at the same time as you're working on those to think about getting everything lined up properly. And if we just start with the right one, there's a mounting pin here, which you're going to sit in like that, and then that's what your assembly is going to be like. And then you need to be thinking about making sure the whole thing is going to line up. Actually, let me just bring that in a little bit center so you can see better, like so. That's what you're also thinking about at the same time. Don't stick those in position before you've also then thought about orientating and aligning this, because looking at this, I can see that, you know, I've got a 1mm gap here that I've got to close up. So do I close it by rotating that, or do I need to do a bit of work to get this piece to mount closer to the front plate? Just stuff that you need to be mindful of when you're working this. You don't want to be just sticking all these bits on without doing lots of test fitting as well. And the same is true of the other side. And I can already tell that this side is going to be more problematic than the other one. I'm ready for it this time to be able to get it to go just right, I think. And the other thing as well that I've not mentioned then was when you're at this stage, the other thing to bear in mind is with these parts here is to start thinking about test fitting them. I've done a bit of work doing some sanding on these, cutting these grooves out on the side here. And cutting those out better. That's a notch I put in myself because otherwise I wasn't fitting quite right to allow for it to move against this plastic buttress here. So it's also worth doing some work around that, and that is all focused around getting these tracks parallel running down the front. And that's important because where the track comes out, it's going to then interface onto these components. What I'm going to be doing next is doing some work with these pieces here and just doing a bit of alignment work with this. Then I'm ready to stick the whole hull together, put the side units on, and then mount the tracks, and then mount these. Once you get these in position, get the position on this bit really good, then it's going to get easier because you're then moving underneath the tank with the track unit, so you're in effect it's hidden, so it's much more out of view. This is the most important bit to visually get right. Although saying that, we're going to have a similar sort of challenge when we come to fill these voids up with a rear equivalent wheel, and that's something I'll talk about in a later episode. There you have it. That's part 4 of my build guide on the Legion Fellblade tank. Please share your thoughts and observations in the comments as always. I'll be very interested to hear. And keep an eye out for part 5. But other than that, I'd just like to say thank you very much for watching. I'll speak to you next time, and goodbye. So put that in, and then we take the glacis plate and just bob it in like, then we can take the upper hull